Alrighty. So, okay, I see a few folks out there. We'll go ahead and start. This will be week 6. There's a project I'm working on in terms of homework project. I was trying to get it to load, but anyway, it's giving us a little bit of difficulty. But I'm not going to really thrust it upon you just yet. It's going to take the place of homework for the rest of the term, but I want to make sure that there's some understanding of the project, and also that ultimately it's for your benefit in terms of coming up with kind of a master financial plan for essentially the rest of your life, or maybe not quite that grandiose, but at least have you think about some planning aspects. So we'll step through most of these slides, and then I'll come back and I'll try and reattack that homework assignment so we can talk about it and maybe get a little bit of input from you. What I think I'm going to do with it is Blackboard kind of gave me some fits. I thought these slides were posted on Blackboard, and that ended up not being the case. They're there at least for right now for one section. I'll get them out to the second later. But I'm also going to post this homework. I'm going to post it in the blog section just to kind of get some input from you in terms of if anybody has any confusion or any of that. It's far easier to put it out there and get some input than to put it out there as an assignment and people be totally confused and ask a whole bunch of questions one-on-one via email. Plus, we can kind of tailor the assignment to what you like. It's not going to, it'll be done about 2 weeks before the end of the term, so it won't be right up there against finals. I don't want you to have another project to do right there at the end. I'm going to try and stagger it so that it'll be after the last test. We'll have the 2 midterms, and before the or one midterm, and before the final. So anyway, today we're going to talk about consumer credit primarily. Let's take a look. Consumer credit, I mean, these are the objectives, but the big picture is, consumer credit can be a lot of people's downfall, but without consumer credit, life would be incredibly difficult, and we would all be a lot less productive. At certain times in your life, you need credit, and used wisely, it's a good thing. In fact, it can be beneficial. You can be one of those people that's on the other side of the curve that is actually, perhaps making a bit of money from credit cards rather than paying exorbitant fees. So anyway, we'll look at some of the information that goes into creditors, how they, also take into account your credit score. And your credit score can also affect the type of credit you'll be able to get, and especially the terms you'll be able to get it. When when you see a real good deal on credit, it's not for people who have had some bankruptcies or other problems. So you want to make sure that your credit's as good as it can be so that you're eligible for the best terms when you need it. Okay, so credit is an arrangement to receive cash and goods for services now and pay for them later in the future, or in the future, which is later. Anyway, personal needs except for a home mortgage. Okay, now we also will talk about home equity loans, which is kind of a hybrid there because you're borrowing against the value in your home, and it is tax deductible, but it's a different way of doing it. Anyway, and it can be used by individuals or family. So let's say you've got something you want to buy. The different way you can finance it, obviously you could just pay cash. You could draw into your savings, or also cash. Use your present earnings. Your next paycheck. Most people, though, for big purchases or unforeseen purchases, they don't have the ability to necessarily use their present earnings. In terms of drawing on their savings, you can, but ultimately, you'll run out of savings. If the terms are good and you're sure you're going to be able to pay it off, and it's favorable to you, you may borrow against expected future income. So that's what we're talking about. That future income is taking the consumer credit. So anyway, there's a ton of money to be made in this, and a lot of the procedures and things that are done in consumer credit, believe it or not, are kind of illegal in most states. There's usury laws that limit the amount of interest that you can pay to a certain amount. Usually it's 5% over like a prime rate. And if you know a credit card, they go 15, 18%, things like that. Well, if you also notice where your credit card bills come from, they used to always come from Delaware, which was a state that had very lax usury laws, and now they come from South Dakota, which is, as a marketing thing, has lowered or actually raised the permissible interest rates that can be charged and not considered usury. If you were here in Alaska and you tried to open up a credit card company that was solely based, Alaska-based corporation, would not go because you could not charge those kind of rates. So if Alaska wanted to get in that business, they could be like these other guys and change their laws. But, there's only room for one sort of South Dakota or Delaware to take advantage of that kind of niche. It's just a whatever. If everybody did it, then it wouldn't be good. Also, there's some negative impacts in terms of, there's a reason why there are usury laws, because they can take advantage of folks and make things very poor. But credit cards, they're a bit of an exception. They can still get you into trouble, but for some reason, it doesn't fall under it falls under interstate law and can be done. Use and misuses of credit. Okay, yeah. If you're borrowing for the down payment, usually in previous real estate in other states, you had to show some sort of documented proof that you weren't borrowing for the down payment for a home primarily. That was a legal requirement. Now also, if you're financing a car, let's say, and you're also trying to borrow money for the down payment, that should be a warning sign that things are not going to go well. And also the budget. You really need to be very careful about impulse buys that are going to saddle you with this fixed debt that you're not going to be able to pay off. And can I use it some other way? Can I find a better way to finance this? Now, a lot of times, especially with cars, there's going to be these huge, zero interest deals. But usually, if you talk to like the car salesman or whatever, they will say, "Oh yeah, that's our promotion this month. Last month we're offering, say, $5,000 off on a car. This month we're offering zero interest." So the truth is it really zero interest? I mean, you're essentially paying a premium for that low interest rate. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a good deal, but I'm just saying there's more math involved, because if your ability to negotiate on the price is completely gone, if you take that low interest rate, then that's not a good deal. Car dealers, there's some standards and practices there that are pretty unscrupulous. Just another kind of example: if a car dealer ever says they're selling you the car at cost, or they're actually losing money, again, you should be suspect. The way they play that game is that, for example, I bought a truck this way one time, and it wasn't much of a truck, believe me, and this was some years ago, but it was like $7,000-8,000, and they were losing money on it, brand new. So obviously it wasn't an old, this was years ago, and it was only a Nissan at the time. But anyway, the way they do that is, sure enough, they could show me an invoice that showed, they paid whatever the same amount for, or a little bit more, and they're actually losing money. But what they don't tell you is that they've got an arrangement with the manufacturer that they're giving, say, a $2,000 or $3,000 bonus for every car they sell. So they really aren't paying that amount of money for the car, because for every car they sell, they get this payment at the end of the year. So, they can show you and try and trick you with an invoice and claim that they're selling it, taking a loss, but really they aren't. So obviously, if they're still in business, if their company is still cruising along, the salesman's still involved, people are making money. So be aware. Use and misuses of credit. Can I postpone the purchase? What are the opportunity costs? And what are the dollar and psychological costs of using credit for this purchase? Obviously, can you postpone this purchase? Well, that's not so much an emotional decision. If you're wrapped up in it, it's whatever. Obviously, you you should try and postpone the purchase if you could, if it made sense. But I'll give you some credit there that you've decided it is, time to buy at this point. The opportunity cost, that just means what are you going to give up? What are the opportunity costs of postponing this purchase? If you did postpone it, what else could you do with that money? Opportunity cost means, what other uses there could be for that. And the psychological cost of using credit for purchases. It's one thing to go out and buy a new car and be making payments on it and say they're fairly pricey. But let's say you take a 6-year loan on that car. Do you really want to be paying that same amount of money, because the payment's going to stay the same through the course of the loan? And at the 6-year point, when you're upside down on the car and now you've got maintenance things starting to enter into the picture, and you're still making those payments, you might be able to, justify that high payment when it's a new car, but when it's a 6-year-old car, you're not going to feel the same way about it. So, again, you got to do what you got to do, but there is some whatever. Best thing to do is shop within your means and try not to computers and cars are, and they aren't investments. They're just sinkholes. The money is gone. If you're really going to have to go out and spend some money, real estate, if you've got this desire to dump money, real estate is typically going to be a much better investment, and it appreciates rather than depreciates, and it has some tax benefits. So the guy with the crummy house and the big car versus the guy with the beater car but the beautiful house, the guy with the beautiful house is probably going to be a lot better off in the end. Plus, the guy with the big house is typically the interest is a little bit lower than most consumer credit, unless there's some sort of special or albeit like gimmick type thing going on. Anyway, if there is a good deal on interest and you can still get the car at the right price, then by all means go for it. But just keep in mind, if it's a promotional rate and it takes away your ability to negotiate for other things, then there's a cost you're paying for that low interest rate. Enough said. Advantages of credit. Yeah, the cushion for financial emergencies, if you can manage your credit well and you can pay off these bills, then, again, opportunity cost. Maybe you can devote a greater portion of your income into investments. Because if you've got that money sitting there in cash, even if you're getting a little bit of interest on it, you aren't going to be covered in inflation. And money that you're just holding idly in cash is going away. It's slowly eroding. The dollar figure may stay the same or may increase slightly, but the ability to buy, the purchasing power of that money is dropping. Convenient when shopping, even more convenient. Now Visa, MasterCard, if it's under $25, you don't even have to sign. It used to be, you'd let the guy with the cash cut to the front of the line because he was going to be in and out. Now, the guy with the credit card can blow right through, and it's much easier. It also used smartly, because some of the laws on credit cards and also some of the policies that the banks have individually, you have a bit more protection than when you're paying for cash. So it depends on the debit cards from bank to bank, but with credit cards, most of that is enshrined in law in terms of the fairness aspect and your a certain degree of warranty on it. So that works for most things. More advantages of credit. Yeah, the one monthly payment, safer than cash. Obviously, try and rent a rental car or pay for a hotel in cash, and they think you're some sort of criminal, and they want extra deposits and stuff. The bonuses, deep and airline miles, some of us have to do that. Just about everybody here in Alaska, wants to build up airline miles, but you can do that. The other thing they don't really list here is, again, that I've talked about before, is the fact that it gives you sort of a single document at the end of the month where you can look back and go, whoa, I spent a lot of money on, one particular item, as opposed to when you got, say, a few $100 in your cash, and at the end of the weekend it's all gone, and you're not quite sure, it went here and there, and it's gone. So, in terms of financial review, I find it helpful to use either credit or a debit card, whatever you prefer. But again, we're not using that truly as consumer credit. We're using that as a method of payment because we aren't going to, in the scenario we're looking for, we aren't going to be carrying a balance on these cards. If you're carrying a balance, they win. They are making money on you. If you aren't carrying a balance, if you're playing the float, like let's say you use a credit card and until the billing cycle comes due, typically you have like what they call a float of like 25 days where you've essentially used their money. They aren't charging you interest, and as long as you pay off that bill in full, you've gotten a very good deal there. You've gotten the float, but miss it by a day and they're back in the winning circle. So be careful with that. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I have a friend of mine, one of my best friends actually. He was leaving the Navy. He was leaving early and knew his income was going to go to nothing. And so all those free credit card things, he took out about 60 grand, dumped it in real estate, and he did well. But, for every one of those guys, there's a lot of people who have, lost their shirt or the plans have gone completely backwards. So anyway, he did well. He returned all their money, and he whatever, and they thought he still had a job, which was, so there's probably this was a long time ago, probably a little bit of fraud involved though. When he fills out the credit card things, telling him about his current income, he didn't happen to mention that current income was going to stop in a few weeks. But anyway, dangerous game, but people do play it. Disadvantages of credit: temptation to overspend. Yeah, if people start talking to you, again, I'm getting back to a car example, not necessarily this, but if they start talking to you about what the monthly payment is and don't worry about what the cost is, no, that's when you should go someplace else. That guy's, he's trying to put, little things into the vehicle, the weatherizing or the, extra polish or the floor mats or whatever, and trying to justify it by saying, don't worry about it. It's just going to raise your monthly payment by a few bucks. Well, the more you finance, the worse that situation is going to be. Your total purchasing power obviously is not going to stay the same, and failure to repay a loan may lead to loss of income. They will flat take it until you declare bankruptcy. But then once you declare bankruptcy, you're stuck for about 7 years. So. And there's a number of things you can't do. The ramifications of bankruptcy is it's definitely something you want to avoid. It's not a get out of jail free card. There are consequences. So even interviews, anything in terms of you could never get a security clearance if you're in that kind of work with the government. If you're it just reflects poorly on your character if you're in a bankruptcy. Now if you've got somebody with uninsured medical bills and you end up in that situation, that's what bankruptcy is designed for. It's not designed for people who just want everything at once and then pretend they're going to declare bankruptcy. Another thing you may find out too, if you haven't already heard this or you don't know it, it is the law that student loans are not taken out. There's a particular word for it. Anyway, I'm missing it. In bankruptcy, not discharged. Your other debts would be discharged by the judge in bankruptcy, which means they're kind of erased, but your credit's, in the gutter and you can't get anything for 7 years. But guess what? Even if you declare bankruptcy and you've got federal student loans, they will continue to come after you for that, and you will pay those at some point. So, you don't want to mess with that. Okay, so different kinds of credit. If you've got closed-end credit and then open-end credit, it's almost self-explanatory if you look at the notes there. If you take out a loan on a home or on a car, there's a certain term. You don't just, it's not a credit card where it stays open, where you've got some sort of line of credit where it's, you pay a little off, you borrow a little bit. No, there are defined terms in there. So that's the difference between open-ended credit and closed-ended credit. Closed-ended credit. Yeah, you pay interest and finance charges if you do not pay the bill in full when due. So again, if you have a credit card, and you have to check the terms because they aren't all the same, but typically there's about 25 days where you can pay that bill and pay no charges at all. There's also a difference between credit cards and what they call travel and entertainment cards. It's getting more complex because American Express was always the good example of what a travel and entertainment card was. It wasn't truly a credit card because at the end of the month they want it all. They don't want part of the payment, they want it all. Now they've branched out and they're also doing some credit, so you don't have to pay off the balance in full. But so there's actually, yeah, still two different kinds because the travel and entertainment card is it's not a credit card at all. So a lot of folks have credit cards. I mean, it depends on the terms. For a lot of you, it might be smart to get a second credit card. If you've got a credit card that's got some fairly high terms, or you got into something with some sort of promotional deal or co-branding, like they say, if you are carrying a balance, it behooves you to transfer that balance to a card that has a lower interest rate if you can, and consolidate it. Also, if you got multiple cards out there or store cards, it can be a nightmare. But if you're going to shop at stores like Kohl's, and I think Kohl's is probably the biggest there. Gap. I mean, I've got some of those cards. I really don't want them. I really don't use them that often. But I've got a daughter, and when she goes shopping, I get a lesser deal if I don't have those cards. So. But I'm just very careful with them because I would much rather, have a single, say, MasterCard or Visa than a bunch of store cards. But anyway, I'm not the master shopper, and I can tell you, if you don't have the store cards, sometimes you don't get the same deal. The smart cards and some of these store cards that are, I'm not talking store credit cards, but I'm like saying somebody gives you a kind of a gift card. You have to be really careful with those. Number one, they can only be used at that store, which is a little bit of a drag. But the big drag is if you lose them, say you got $50 on the card, it's gone. Or as some people who had like Circuit City gift cards or other gift cards, you've lost that money. It's gone. So I try to stay away from them. Obviously, if you take something back to, say, Home Depot or Lowe's, and you don't have a receipt, they're going to give you one of those gift cards. But again, treat it like cash because it's not like a credit card. If it's lost, it is truly lost. Whereas a credit card, you just cancel it, and money-wise, you're the same as you ever were. Debit cards, again, I'm a big proponent of that, depending on the consequences. I had a debit card company that they paid me 15 cents every time I used it. And it was my normal bank, so I used it a lot. And whatever, 15 cents isn't the end of the world, but I would get 12, 15 bucks back. I mean, and also it had the advantage for me of a single statement because all my checking and because debit cards come right from your checking, so you had a single source at the end of the month to review in terms of budgeting. But again, you're all going to have your preferences, but just keep in mind that there's differences between them. Debit cards are obviously, we're talking about consumer credit here, and they are not any form of credit. That's money coming directly from your account. Smart cards and store cards, the gift cards, those are not credit as well. You are, you've already paid them. It's kind of reverse credit, and if you lose it, they aren't going to shed a tear. They're going to be quite happy because they've already been paid. So. Protecting yourself against fraud, you can do all these things, but to tell you the truth, there's people, like I've said, in Spain and other countries where they read the card, they get the numbers, and you're in big trouble. But what you can do is check your statements, and preferably online so it's a little quicker. You know, check mid-month and just see what it looks like, and then check when you get your statement. This also is probably the reason to, you know, if you're going to have those store cards like a Gap card or a Kohl's card or whatever, keep those things at a zero balance so you don't have any you know, extra places to check. You know, if you are going to be whatever, if you're going to catch fraud, a lot of times it's going to have to be you. You know, look after it. Now again, if there is fraud and it's a credit card, you know, you have some protection, but your protection diminishes the longer it goes unnoticed. A lot of times they'll call you up and they'll say, you know, they're helping you out, and they are to a certain extent, but they're really helping themselves out too because they're on the hook for this. They're on the hook for the fraud. And debit cards, like I mentioned before, debit cards are treated by the institutions independently. So, you know, that's where you'll find out how good your bank is when you have a problem with the debit card and whether they help you out or they leave you hanging. Experian, you know, that's who they've got listed there. There's 3 big credit bureaus. Experian's one of them. But, yeah, they can, you know, do some magic there and deactivate the card. But you're best to call your bank directly. This checking the credit report regularly, that's a good idea, but to catch the, you know, the early fraud, you're probably going to have to see it on your statement yourself, which sort of drives you to the fact to simplify things to have less. Just 1 second.
How you doing? My name's Mark Denslinger.
Yeah, I've got a BTC thing going on. No problem. Cool. I'll come back. Just have a question. Okay. Anyway, got another student coming by. So, Experian, this checking the credit report regularly, we'll talk more about this, but you are not going to be paying, if you're smart, for those credit reports. You don't need to. There's a law where they need to be issued. So some of these things, freecreditreport.com and then these other things, if it's got a .com associated with it, you know, what you're really setting yourself up for is to be overwhelmed with emails and other things from those sort of third parties. You want to deal directly with the companies themselves, the credit bureaus, and we'll talk a little bit about that, how to do that. So, when you make purchases online, yeah, secure browser, keep records, review monthly statements, everything we just talked about. Personal information private, businesses you know and trust. You know, if you are using some of these flaky ones, PayPal's got a little bit more protection if you're familiar with that. It's online bill service, and they don't actually get to see your bank account information. And obviously, if somebody's, well, if you're wiring money to people for, you know, things you got on eBay or Craigslist, if you ignore all those warnings, then you deserve what's going to happen to you. You will get ripped off. But anyway, if you're dealing with legitimate folks, you know, and are smart about it, it's kind of the way business is done. But again, keeping your information safe and sometimes using something like PayPal is a good idea. Don't download, yeah, obviously not. Okay, travel and entertainment cards. So this is what we're talking about. American Express, Diners Club. I had a Diners Club card once. I think it was accepted at one place. It was the biggest waste of time and frustration that you'd ever want to experience. So I'm not sure why somebody would do that. American Express is a little bit more widely accepted, but unfortunately, just when you think, you know, everybody takes it, you run into one place that doesn't, and then you're stuck. So if you want to carry multiple cards, go ahead. Business cards, you know, different corporations I've worked for have required me to carry American Express, and I've done it, and it keeps things sort of separate, but whatever. I'm not very impressed by them, and other people who, you know, throw their American Express card out there, and it's just sort of odd. Anyway, I'm not a big fan. I did get one of their credit cards that gave me 30,000 airline miles, but I'll put my daughter's tuition on it, pay it off, and cancel that bill, cancel that card. So, also American Express, generally these guys waive the fees, but a lot of times they have an annual fee. There's no need to be paying annual fees on credit cards, so avoid that. Store value and gift cards. Again, they look like a debit card, but lose them and you are in trouble. And bankruptcy, again, the whole Circuit City and a few of the others. Circuit City, though, was probably the most prominent one that took a lot of people down because it kind of happened in the during the Christmas season, and it makes for not the best gift you want to give. Home equity loans. Yeah, based on the difference between your current and market value. Now, values on, I don't know if you've been seeing the home values. Again, there's a lot of gamesmanship and reporting on the markets, but Case-Shiller Index, it's major markets, they're showing that double-digit growth in real estate. So that is good news. It means a lot of people aren't going to be underwater. Underwater means when your loan is higher than the value of your home. So as people start to gain equity again in their house, then you have the opportunity to borrow against that equity, generally at a lower interest rate because they've got a secured loan. See, the difference between a credit card, the reason why the rates will be higher on that is because they have nothing to go after other than you, which is kind of difficult. If you take a home equity loan, or you see these also down in the South, down in Alabama, Georgia, you see all these car title loans where you actually put up some collateral. Well, those people, the car title loans, they'll charge you high interest and take your car. Here, they'll take your house, but generally they'll give you a lower rate on it. You got to be careful with these, but if it comes down to, putting on a credit card or putting on a home equity loan, it's kind of a no-brainer that the home equity loan would be the better thing. Also, if it is a home equity loan and using it for home improvement, then that should increase the value of your home. So it's not like you're, wasting the money. It's actually an investment because, like I said, real estate is an investment. If you're buying snow machines and other things that are, depreciating assets, then think twice about that. Assess your credit capacity. So before you take a loan, can you afford the loan? What do you plan to give up in order to make a payment? This is fairly no-brainer stuff. I mean, you need to, if it says, your new car payment's going to be $1,000 a month, and you've got, $1,200 total, then yeah, you aren't going to be able to eat. I mean, I don't see this so much in college students, but in some of the folks in the military who are also going to get a check, yeah, they're happy to spend, all but about $30 on a vehicle loan. And then, things go horribly wrong within a few months. And like I said, it's one thing when it's a nice, shiny car that you're making those high payments on. When it's a beater out there in the lot that's 5-6 years old, and your payment is still the same, it's even worse. So it just goes downhill from there. Measuring your credit capacity, so debt to payments, debt to income ratio. So you get your monthly payments divided by your net monthly income. And what they're saying is, 20% is what you want your consumer credit. So that's, consumer credit. So like they say there, the house payment's not part of that, but the car payment is. So if you're between, whatever your income is, and if your car payment and your credit cards are more than 20%, then, that should set off some flags. It should also set off some flags when you're trying to get the loan. And they may still give you the loan, but they'll probably punish you a little bit by not giving you the same terms. You won't probably get as low of interest rate, so keep that in mind. So debt to equity ratios, get total liabilities divided by net worth, and that should be less than one. So, yeah, when you're owe more than you're worth, that should be a red flag that, yeah, there might be a problem here. Especially depending on that debt. You know, sometimes with a home, it can happen. But, um, you know, 10 years ago, I would have been completely comfortable with that sort of ratio. Now, after seeing just what could happen in the real estate market, and again, it's going to come back, but seeing how far it can dip, you need to be cautious. Depends on the market too. You know, a place like Alaska hasn't really fluctuated that much. Some of these towns like Las Vegas and Phoenix, those people were they should have seen the end coming. I was in Spain when I had a home, and I was making it was like 18% a year. They said the prices were going up, so I had the home for 3 years, which I was there. People told me to keep it as an investment, and I said, "Nah, this can't last forever." I mean, I wasn't that sharp. I was probably more lucky than good, but had I stayed in it a couple more years, I would still be owning a home in Spain, and anyway, it wouldn't be worth a dime. The market completely, the bottom completely fell out, so be careful with that. Co-signing a loan, hopefully, you know, I don't mean hopefully, but, you know, people are probably not going to be relying on you to co-sign loans for them, at least for a little while. You may have to, you know, ask somebody to co-sign a loan with you so that you can get the credit. But you have to be very, very careful. You know, is this your, you know, parents, or is it brother and sister, or is it something like that where, you know, you've got whatever. I'm not going to get in your family business, but if you co-sign the loan, you're guaranteeing the debt. So if that guy flakes for any reason, and it could even be medical issues, it could be, you know, the greatest guy in the world, but, you know, people sometimes have problems, and you signed off on that debt, so it is yours. So collection fees, you know, by the time they actually come to you for this loan, it's probably actually more than you co-signed for, because there's probably been a lot of late fees and collection fees racked up. So, and again, if you're the collection agency and the person who's the, you know, originator of the loan appears to be kind of a deadbeat, they probably aren't going to waste their time with them. You know, even if you know that person might have the money, if you look like an easier target, somebody that they can garnish your wages and do the rest of that, they will, because, you know, they're in business. The less time it takes them to get their money, the happier they are. So, anyway, it's going to happen. You know, somebody's going to co-sign a loan, and everything can work out well. But when things don't work out well, they really don't work out well. Can you afford to pay the loan? Yep. You may, you know, the credit agencies now may say, whoa, wait a minute, you've got a lot of loans out there, and so, you know, we can't offer you, you know, the loan at all, or we can offer it to you, but at a worse rate. So keep that in mind. Whatever collateral is put up, that could be gone, and it's going to vary from state to state. But Alaska, in the case of cosigners, is fairly typical. It's still, you know, you're liable for it. Anyway, and if you end up being on hook for the loan, yeah, you want them communicating directly with you, because you're ultimately going to be paying for those late fees. So if you're, it's just going to make the situation worse. Maintaining your credit, yeah. If you live within the terms of the contracts, and you know, it's pretty boring stuff to read. First off, that's why we did that little exercise where you kind of look at the banks. The banks that are going to have the worst terms, or they're going to have other, you know, little clues that they're not the best bank you want to deal with. I mean, banks should be in, you know, your financial relationship for the long haul. So if they burn you on a couple instances, that's probably not the bank you want to deal with. So anyway, find an institution that's got the best terms available, and then you know, take care of your loans, and occasionally look to see what's in your credit report, so you can look at that credit report. Again, you don't have to pay for those credit reports. You're due them, and I've got the FTC, or whatever it is, FTC information here in a second. So these guys are huge. We talked about Experian because you saw them with the phone number earlier in the slides, and then TransUnion and Equifax. So people hate them, you know. In some cases, they hate you. But anyway, they are what they are. They are the people who come up with your credit scores. So, and they share information. I mean, they're like the NSA. They know everything about you, everything that's going on. So, you know, there's not too many debts that wouldn't show up on their radar. And sometimes too, strange things. You know, if you say you look at cars one day and you go around and you look at three or four and you don't sign any paperwork, you're just looking, but it can ping your credit rating if they, you know, take down your information at all. You know, you could find that your credit score actually goes down by just giving, you know, a few details, not actually signing anything for a loan, but just exploring. If you have a bunch of small outstanding credit cards, they'll generally look at a credit card, say it's got a, you know, a $10,000 or $15,000 max, you know, max available credit line. They'll look at that $15,000 as a debt, even if it's down to zero. So again, that's another reason you don't want too many credit cards, because for all the credit bureau knows is, you know, you buy this car or whatever, and then the next day you can run out and max up all these cards. So they've got to protect themselves. So be careful with that. Whoops, what happened there? Stepped out of it. Anyway, back. So Fair Credit Reporting Act. Again, you know, this stuff is, well, you know, they do some good things, but there's a lot of fine print that you may or may not read when you're, you know, say you're buying a car. There's just a bunch of documents, and there are some credit, you know, reporting acts and other things to protect you, but they can only protect you if you allow yourself to be protected. So in terms of the credit bureaus, you know, because they've had so many complaints, they've tried to minimize some of the abuse and impacts they could have. And that adverse data can only be reported for 7 years, bankruptcy for 10. So, you know, again, it depends on the situation. I've heard 7 for both bankruptcy, but obviously sometimes it can be out to 10. So if you've got a bankruptcy in your records, the good thing is you don't have to worry about all those nasty credit card things coming to your house, at least for the most part. They may come, but they won't be the same deals. If you're denied credit, well, guess what? They owe you a one of your credit bureau reports, so you don't have to, you know, order one, or, well, you do have to let them know you want that, but you certainly don't have to pay for it. And if they truly have, you know, made some mistakes or done something abusive, you can sue them. So anyway, there's a lot of details in there in terms of, you know, the right to provide a 100-word explanation in your file for what went wrong and all the rest of that. Probably not going to help you out a great deal. Most people are just going by that, you know, 3-digit score. In terms of credit, you know, what they're looking for: character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. Yeah, the collateral issue, obviously, if it's credit card, that's why the interest rate is higher, because they don't have much in the way of collateral. Capital, obviously, you know, they're going to ask what your income is. That's going to be their primary discriminator on whether to give you that credit card or not. And then they're going to look at your credit history in terms of your character and your capacity. So, how to improve your credit score? Okay, so this is what I've said. This paragraph down here at the bottom that I added, that website is current, and so the Fair Credit Reporting Act, they need to give you a free copy of your credit report at your request once every 12 months. So, you know, it's not something where you got to go through, you know, freecreditreport.com or one of these other guys that's going to bombard you with a bunch of advertisements for things that you don't want. You're trying to improve your credit. You're not trying to buy more stuff. So I would try and deal directly with those folks, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Their information's probably going to be very similar, and you can look through those documents if you've ever gotten a credit report. For example, if you're buying a house, you have to order a credit report. I think the charge was like $55 or something. But anyway, it was the lender required it, and they charged you for it. So anyway, like I'm saying, you can get one of these for free every 12 months, and you can look through there. And it's also a good way, even if you see you've had a credit card with some bank or something like that, or not a bank, but a store, a Kohl's or a Target or something you just kind of forgot about. They will show up on that credit report, and you can go ahead and get them canceled, and then that will actually improve your credit a bit, because now, say it was a $1,000 credit limit on there, that'll be taken off. So that's a good thing. Anyway, yeah, credit card repair scams, those are kind of like the people who offer to take the viruses off your computer and then put viruses on at the same time. So you gotta have to be careful. The people who are out to repair your credit are often not the people you want to deal with. Fair Credit Reporting Act. Notify the creditor within 60 days. Explain your explanation. So you can see there's a lot of legalese in here, but there's a lot of deadlines as well. So if you act promptly, your credit rating is not affected while the item's in dispute, and the rest of it works. I've had this. I had a Avis in Lafayette, in the Baltics, claimed that I trashed one of their cars, and I worked through MasterCard, and it all got done. It was all taken care of. I had my girls driving the car. I mean, maybe an illegal act, but we didn't damage the car. The one daughter was only 7, and the other one was 13 or so at the time. And we got wheat all up underneath the bottom of this car from driving down a wheat field. They claimed we ruined the transmission. Well, now there was some grass stuck up under there, but I drove the car like 3 or 4 days after that, and it was still fine. So be careful, but you need to get involved quickly with the credit card companies and not be subject to that. Fair Credit Billing Act. This is what I was talking about. If you're using a credit card, this is kind of one of the advantages. If you paid in cash, good luck. I mean, you're dealing with them one-on-one. Here, if you're paying with a credit card, you've got a federal act that you can leverage to assist you. So again, you have to be sincere about it, but it depends what happened. In this case, if they would have said, hey, we need to clean this car and settle for a couple $100, I probably would have done it. But I think they wanted around $2,000, saying I completely trashed the car that I had just driven 4 hours to their agency. So obviously it wasn't trashed. If your identity is stolen, yeah, what you might do, especially if you're going to like a high risk kind of place, I've done this where I've just got any credit cards or anything I'm going to be carrying with me, and just put them on a photocopier, just made like a single page, and put them somewhere in my luggage. You don't want to make this worse. You don't want somebody stealing those numbers and having access. But generally they need the entire car with a magnetic strip. But anyway, by at least having a copy of your cards somewhere in a safe place, if you do lose your wallet, now you have a much easier time of canceling everything because you've got the card numbers and stuff. So don't take my advice in terms of taking that photocopy with you. Maybe leave it with somebody back at home, and you can call them and they can take care of it for you, and you can continue on your vacation. So, but anyway, you need to know what you had in the wallet when the wallet is lost, because it's kind of hard to reconstruct. Yeah, file a police report. Yeah, this happens so often that, yeah, it's going to go in a bin probably. But anyway, at least it'll add the numbers, and maybe they can identify the people. But you're going to have to call most of these folks one-on-one to get help. And then if you alert the credit card bureaus, they're going to temporarily kind of kill your credit card rating, which is not a bad thing because your credit rating. So if somebody does try and finance something under your name, it's going to be difficult for them, as it would be for you. So your ability to get credit is going to be hampered for a little bit until you can get the thing squared away. But at least you aren't going to have any fresh damage done. They've got all these LifeLock and other things like that, and if that's if you feel comfortable with that, it certainly couldn't hurt. But a lot of times it's probably repetitive coverage. I know my bank will call me if they see strange transactions going over, multiple countries in different days. They'll call and find out, are you traveling, what's going on. So complaining about consumer credit, yeah, try and take care of it with the creditor. More formal complaint, and then consumer protection laws if you have to get down to that. I find, obviously it's better to communicate as quickly as possible, but I always follow it up with a letter. People tend to delete emails. It's, complaints and emails, I don't find it to be very effective. But a letter, as the dust settles, is probably a better way to go. All the different acts out there, this generates a lot of the paperwork you see. So, this stuff is there to help you, but if you just kind of push it aside like the salesman wants you to and just sign, then you've kind of defeated most of these things. But they will have some of these truth in lendings and some of these other documents that explain, they do sort of the time value of money problems for you to tell you just how much you're really going to be paying for that thing. And the information is accurate, but sometimes it's pretty painful when you realize just how expensive the credit is. And then this takes very long to act. If you've dealt with the government before, you need to take care of the immediate situation. And, if there has been some fraud, they may get you your money back, but, you're going to be the one eating top ramen for several months if you're waiting on the government to get involved on your issue. Chapter 7. We've actually got more time next week to talk about Chapter 7. I'm going to try not to let this thing go over an hour tonight because I do want to talk about the project. I'm going to see if I can get the project loaded one more time. It's basically going to be the homework project, and I'm going to see if I can save it as a I'll save it as a PDF, and that should allow us to bring it into this project. Just one second. If anybody has any questions, I'll be available at the office hours. Again, nobody was signed on for the office hours, so that's not really a problem. I'll just take it as a thing that everybody is pretty comfortable, and between the book and the lectures is getting out of it what they need. This term project, I expect to sort of generate some questions, which is fine, and that's why I'm going to put it on the blog section to kind of get some comments from you rather than try and do the emails one-on-one all week. You'll probably have similar questions to the other folks, and we'll do that. Let me see if this will load now that it's a PDF. Yeah, not supporting. Okay, I'm going to post this out there on the site, but let me just kind of read you in a nutshell what the thing is going to be. It's going to be a sort of a planning project for you in your own personal financial situation. And it's going to be either at this point directly, if you're already establishing a career, or as a lot of you are just college students and you're going to be a few years before you get out there in the market and are able to be making money the way you would like to in terms of being able to invest. So we'll do this project. Let me see if I can minimize it just a little bit. There we go. And you're going to make, you're going to establish what your goals are, and then you're going to go through the different processes you're going to need to use to meet those goals. So, obviously, if you've got kids, saving for college, comfortable retirement, and then, of course, if something bad happens in terms of where you're going to be in terms of if there's a death or a serious injury, especially if you as probably the primary wage earner, or at least a significant wage earner. So we'll talk also, there'll be some research type things in it in terms of student loans. You folks will be in a unique position because some of the student loans will, if they're heavy student loans, they'll impact your ability to save. And your ability to save and invest right as you're coming out of college is pretty important, because that's where the time is going to have the most amount of time value of money. There's a question, will be in the form of paper? Yes, it will. Okay. Again, it's going to be due 4 to 5 page, typewritten, double spaced. Report highlighting your strategy and the financial vehicles you propose to reach your goals. So there'll be more to it, and I want to get some input from you. I'm not trying to make this an insurmountable task, but I am trying to give you a project that I think will be better in terms of you being able to get some good out of the class, and also to budget your time a little bit. The weekly homework is good, but I don't think it always generates the best product because people are trying to get it done. This project is something, a 4 to 5 page project. I think you could devote some time to it and end up with a better product, and I think it'll be of good use to all of you. So anyway, I didn't see any other questions really in the chat tonight. Did anybody have anything else? My apologies, it didn't look like the slides came up on Blackboard, so I'll reload those now. I put it in the announcements, but I don't think they announced this main one. Is there a deadline for when the homework is due? All the deadlines on the homework, because of the book problem, those have been relieved, basically. We will have a solid deadline for this project, but that's going to be quite a ways out in the future. The problem with if we didn't have a deadline for the final project is it will be be right up against finals. With the time I'm looking at for when this project will be due is approximately 2 weeks out from the finals, because I don't want you, I want you to have enough material in order to write the paper correctly. So we've talked about all the different topics, but again, I don't want you, taking time away from your finals for this and other classes to be writing the paper. This paper is, it can do you a lot of good, and you can use fictitious numbers, but again, I'm not going to share your work with anybody else. So put whatever numbers in there you like, and you don't need to tell me whether they're real or fictitious. But anyway, it will give you a chance, especially for most of you, at a young stage of your life, if you learn how to come up with a plan and start implementing that plan, it can make a huge difference for you. And so I think we're going to get some good out of it. But anyway, I'm trying to solicit some input from you folks in terms of anything else you want to see in the project, or anything else you want to cover in it. Anything else? All right. Well, that is pretty much an hour. So we'll leave the chapter 7, but it's just going to be a again, more credit and cost of alternatives. If you have anything you want me to talk about, anything in the book you saw you didn't quite understand, because the book, for example, the whole business of home equity loans and the tax deductibility of them, they didn't mention that in this chapter, but it is a fact, and it is used in the other chapters. Now, there's some other things too. One thing I'll touch on quickly is that's not talked about in this chapter either is capital gains in terms of a home. Again, real estate, I'm a big proponent of investing in real estate, because let's say you have a home, it's appreciated, which hopefully things are going to be doing from here on out. If you have some profit from that, as long as you've lived in that house for 2 of the past 5 years, you can take up to $250,000, $250,000 tax-free. You can't do that any place else. If you're married, there's 2 of you, obviously, so you get $500,000, so $500,000. If you make a $500 million in the stock market, they are going to take, and the capital gains rate is no longer 15%. That deal has gone away. So anyway, look forward to seeing you next week. And if you have any more questions, email me, and I'll look for your input on the blog on the homework thing. And that's it. Talk to you later.